asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
Right, well, the reaction to my take on the jailing of Tommy Robinson was predictable, if not a little depressing and a little sad. I very rarely look at comments on the YouTube videos because I've been around a long time and I genuinely couldn't give an arse what people think about what it is I say or who I interview or what it is they say. This is the thing. When I first started, I used to absolutely, and I think everybody who's ever presented on radio and telly, when you first start, you really do have thin skin. You know, when you first start, you're not able for the criticism. You're not able for the notion or the idea that people didn't like that music show that you presented. And you're not able for it. But after a while, when I've been around this game nearly 20 years, after a while you learn that it doesn't matter really. You say what you say, you do what you do, and some people will appreciate it and others won't. Fair enough. Who cares? But I looked at it because obviously I've got very strong opinions about identity politics and about the alt-right versus the alt-left, which is a program. It's a system program by a hidden hand, a hidden entity that wants us to completely engage with this system. You know, on one side or another, it doesn't matter. And I use the example of those who follow people like Lennon Robinson and others who've come before him. I use those examples to talk about left versus right and how it's just, as you know, people have said over the years, an illusion. It's an illusion. The establishment couldn't give a damn which side of it you're on, left or, it doesn't matter to them, to the establishment, to those really pulling the strings, so long as you're playing the game. It's a wonderful thing. Think of the establishment like a casino. The establishment is a casino. We're talking about Rothschild Zionism here. We're talking about maybe even something beyond that. Think of it as a casino. It doesn't care whether you prefer roulette or blackjack. Couldn't give a shite so long as you're in the casino. What's he playing? Couldn't care less what he's playing. He's in the casino. Couldn't care less what she's doing. She's in the casino. She's invested in the game. You know, I get stuff thrown at me every day of the week. Richie, have a look at this. It's in the Canary. It's brilliant, Richie. Well, no, it isn't. The Canary is just another, what would you call it, clickbait website from a socialist perspective that can see Jeremy Corbyn doing no wrong. It's just another aspect of the game. It's an echo chamber for people who hate the Tories, and now there's plenty to hate about the Tories, of course, and those current players, what would you call them? The team that the Tories have today. It'll be a different team in 15, 20 years. There's a lot to despise. Hate is a bad word. There's a lot to despise about them or any political party, no matter where they come from. But the Canary's job, in this country anyway, and I don't care about the Canary, I'm just using it as an example because I was sent an article from it today. Its job is to feed back to its viewership that which its viewership wants to read, which is the Tories are scum and the socialist revolution led by Jeremy Corbyn and Seamus Milne and Owen Jones, it is virtuous and it is good. It is bullshit. It is the game. So the casino manager, the casino owner loves it. Thank God they're playing. They're in there. And it's the same with Tommy and everybody else who behaves like Tommy and these people. And I looked at the comments today and you know I had to approve most of the comments. They wouldn't have actually made it under the video because I very rarely go on YouTube. Simon manages it. I had to approve the comments. Some of them are so, well, let's say they were tasty, threatening to kill me, referring to my nationality. The C word was used all the time. If I were Tommy, I'd be saying to some of these people, stay off my side. Football hooligans. Funny, I approved a lot of comments and then YouTube deleted them. YouTube's own artificial intelligence programs later deleted them. I wanted to leave everything there for people to see them. But I think a few of them have been deleted. But there's still plenty of stuff there if you want to have a look at it. Because this is the sort of person you're talking about. Can't rationally, lucidly argue with the points that I've made. And if they did, it'd be great, come on the programme, lucidly, rationally tell me why it is you think I'm wrong. No, threaten me, threaten my family, refer to my nationality, refer to the Irish, use the C word all the time. Bit silly, doesn't bother me now. Sticks and stones and all of that, couldn't care less. But it's indicative of who these people are. Mostly cowardly scum who threaten and abuse under silly trolling accounts with stupid names. No cojones, no testicle to use your real name. Very easy to be to be a keyboard warrior, isn't it? But anyway, I didn't come on to talk about that. I'm just saying, it's fascinating if you look at some of those comments. These are the people that want to replace the fascist dictatorship that we have with a fascist dictatorship led by football hooligans. You see where I'm going? You know what I mean? Which one do you prefer? It's two sides of the same coin, right? Right? Okay. If you want to take this up in the programme, in the phone-in, do. But I'm warning you. If things are said about anybody that are contentious or libelous, I'm going to cut you off. If you're rude, I'm going to cut you off. Simple as that. It's wonderful. All you got to do is that. Bang, gone. So talk about what you want, but be nice. Alrighty? Alrighty. Let me talk about a few things before we do open the phone. And you might want to talk about other things. Racism, you might want to talk about. Roseanne, I wrote something today. It's on the Richie Allen website, richieallen.co.uk. I had an interesting take, at least I think it is anyway. You boastful bastard, Richie. It's interesting to me. I looked at the Roseanne thing and I thought, what about all those people who worked in the crew? The other actors, the other actresses, what about them? They didn't say anything harmful. Did Roseanne say something harmful? She kind of did. Doesn't mean she should be exiled, though. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. She wasn't kind, Roseanne. Maybe we should be more kind to one another. She wasn't kind in the language she used to go after somebody who she doesn't like personally. But does it warrant exile? Does it warrant a label? I mentioned somebody earlier on who I believe to be a racist because he's a serial offender. Doesn't matter how many times he's told that he is and that what he's saying is wrong, he does it anyway. There's a difference. Anyway, we'll talk about it a bit later on. Here's some interesting stuff you heard. Harry there in the news at the top of the hour. Russian journalist, is it Arkady or Arkady? Let's say Arkady Babchenko, was reported yesterday to have been assassinated in Kiev. Well, he's turned up alive and well at a press conference. Now, this development is absolutely bizarre, right? Babchenko he's Russian and a very high profile critic of the Kremlin. And today he caught everybody by surprise because he turned up to a press conference and it was beamed out on Ukrainian television. What happened? Yesterday he was murdered, assassinated. Today he's alive. Well, he said is that he was informed 1 month ago that he was the target of a plot. And the head of Ukraine's security services, Vasyl Hrytsak, well, he said the assassination was ordered by Russian security services. Ukrainian police said that they had made one arrest in connection with the alleged assassination plot. There were gasps and applause as Babchenko entered the room for the press conference on Wednesday. Today, he thanked the Ukrainian security services for saving his life. This is utterly bizarre, this. By the way, the Ukrainian intelligence agencies haven't produced any audio or anything that backs up their claim that the Russians ordered this hit on their own. So what is going on? Well, it seems it's all a little bit too bizarre. Have I not done that yet? No, I've not. No, it's been one of those days, hasn't it? There's been so much to do today about other things. Right, so look, Alistair Bunkle is Sky News' defence correspondent. And it's all a bit too bizarre even for Alistair. Have a listen.
Yeah, utterly bizarre. We started the morning reporting this man's death and wondering why it happened, who was behind it. And we end the day reporting his survival and we are still slightly wondering who was behind it and why they did what they did. From what we're told, they knew about this operation, this plot to assassinate the journalist 2 months ago. He was brought in on it a month ago. So why not do something about it immediately? Well, there is a logic in that. You allow it to play out, and all the while you gather intelligence. So they have arrested a Ukrainian man who they say was paid $40,000 to carry out this killing on behalf of the Russian FSB. If you know that that man has already been employed to do that, you can follow him, you can photograph him, you can monitor his communications, etc. And then you can foil it right at the last minute, having gathered a lot of intelligence. That then begs the next question. Why allow Arkady to effectively die in the eyes of the public, be mourned by neighbours, by family and by fans, be reported on by people like us, only to reveal it less than 24 hours later in a live press conference? It doesn't seem to make much sense. The only logic I can find to that is that having released the news that he was assassinated last night, maybe the Ukrainians wanted to then monitor communications within Russian circles to see whether or not there was any chatter that they could pick up on in order to add to their body of evidence. But it is very confusing. Apart from what the Ukrainian security services have said, that they blame the Russian FSB, there isn't actually any evidence that we've been given, that we've been shown, to show that it was the Russian FSB behind it. So Russia, understandably at the moment, is saying that this is all false and fake.
All false and all fake, eh? That was Alistair Bonko, the Sky News defence editor. Now, Diana Magnay is a Sky News Russia correspondent. She's based in Moscow, actually. She's not amused by what's happened and says the journalists will be pretty pissed off about this. You think?
But I think that there are plenty of journalists out there who feel, to a certain extent, conned, and who will be therefore pressuring the Ukrainian authorities to provide sort of more information, evidence about the scope of this plot. And I think that in this fake news environment where it is very difficult to trust the words of journalists, it does us all a disservice, really, to have security services use the word of a journalist and use them as part of a ploy that turns out not to be true.
Yes, in the immortal words of Marvin Gaye, God rest him, genius. What's going on? What's going on? What is going on? This is as mad as anything I've heard in, well, a long time. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said in a statement, the understatement of the century, that the staged murder was a masquerade done for propagandistic effect. That's a quote, by the way. She said Russia was happy that Babchenko was alive. I wish it were always like this, she said. That it was a lovely comment, that. She was saying basically, I wish every time we were falsely accused of murdering somebody, that they just walked into a room the following day. You know, journalists were delighted yesterday. Couldn't wait to print it and claim that Russia was behind it. I wonder, now it's probably not right to say this, but go on, don't censor yourself. Listen, take this with a massive pinch of salt, what I'm going to say now, because it's just me rambling. But I wonder, was he supposed to stay dead? Was his death supposed to be faked forever, for want of a better way of putting it? Was he supposed to head off to start a new life? But somehow it all went wrong, maybe. You know. Why, Richie? They couldn't go as far as that in order to demonise Russia, I hear you say. But stranger things have happened. I don't know. Maybe maybe some dastardly plot is afoot. Let's take a journalist, maybe a Russian journalist. Let's compromise him or her. This is the Ukrainians now. This is the Ukrainians. Let's compromise the journalist and then tell that person, listen, you have to fake your death and you have to go and live in Brazil or in Mexico or somewhere with your family. Why? Because we've some dirt on you. Because we want to blame the Russians. Look, that's very, very far-fetched and it's probably nonsense. So I don't know what's going on. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take a really quick break because when we come back, I'm going to try and sift through the lunacy that is the post-Italian general election period, the last 2.5 months of madness in Italy. It's getting madder by the minute. But it's a wonderful thing in one way, because it is demonstrating to people in Technicolor on the biggest movie screen, IMAX that you could ever imagine. It's showing people just what a Nazi, sinister, fascist cabal the European Union is, what's happening in Italy. I promise you I won't bore you. This is very interesting. Back in a minute with some chat about Italy, and a little bit later this hour I will throw open the Skype line and the phone line to the programme, and you can come on and talk to me about anything.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
Yeah, welcome back to the programme. 23 minutes past the hour it is, and it's a grim north-west this evening. But I don't mind when I'm doing the show, because it's good to get on air. It's a long old day making this, to be honest. When you get to 25 to 6:15, it's a big relief. Thank God we're finally at the show. If I had my way, the show would be live at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, but that wouldn't be any good to you, would it? Seeing as the majority of our listeners are in Europe and you're at work. So, of course, I'm never going to do that. But I sometimes wistfully listen to presenters doing mid-afternoon talk shows and think, oh, I'd love that. Anyway, Italy. This is serious stuff. Now, you know there was an election in Italy in March. I'm going to try and not labour the point here. I'm going to try and explain this. And I don't want to come off as some sort of asshole lecturer. It's my job to read all this stuff, to read the Italian papers, in English, of course, and the European papers and the UK papers, get a grasp of what's going on, and try and give you some sort of context to it, you know, thinking that you've got your own job and you don't have the time to do it. That's what it's about, really. Let me tell you the way I see what's happening in Italy. We had the election in March, and as you remember, widely reported, I reported it here, the big winners were the nationalist and the anti-EU parties, the Five Star Movement and Liga. Between them, they got like 59.9% of the vote between them. In fact, the Five Star Movement became the largest single party and kind of won a moral right to form a government. It's the way it goes. If you're the largest single party, they had over 50, no they didn't, they had 30, what did they have? Was it 37% of the vote or something like that? 36%. I didn't write the figures down. But they were the largest single party and had a moral right, really, to explore options in terms of forming a coalition government. Now, as you know, it's been a mess for the last couple of months. It's been a mess. Politics in Italy is messy, full stop. I've been covering European politics for years. I'm not even going to get started on it. You'd probably need 2 shows to explain the madness of Italian politics, right? So outside of that, on Sunday, the 5-Star movement, I think it's known as Movement 5-Star, isn't it? MFS, and Liga attempted to form a government. And they initially had the blessing of Italian President Sergio Mattarella. But then things went kind of belly up because Sergio Mattarella basically said no to their choice of finance minister. Why? Why didn't he like the nominee for finance minister that these two parties had put up? Why didn't the president like him? Well, the president said that he couldn't appoint Paolo Savona, their choice, the coalition's choice, saying that there were concerns from investors in Italy and investors in Europe because Paolo Savona has a plan B where, because of Italy's debts and because of the stagnant Italian economy, because of the destruction inflicted upon Italy by membership of the European Union, this guy is anti-European Union, Paolo Savona, and he has a plan B that involves Italy leaving the European Union, leaving the euro, the currency. Now, it's not kind of clear that he could do that without a referendum. But anyway, alarm bells went off all over Europe. The Italian president, Sergio Mattarella, said, no, form a government if you want, but this guy is not going to be your finance minister. So needless to say, the nationalist and Eurosceptic party leaders didn't like it. And there was murders, not to put too fine a point on it. Right? So then the Italian president, Mattarella, did something extraordinary and something as anti-democratic as you could imagine. Anywhere. Banana republics, whatever you want to call it. He said, right then, you guys are not going to form a government, so I'm going to ask a man called Carlo Cottarelli to form an interim government, a technocrat government, while we sort this mess out and we decide whether we're going to have another election. Guess what? The guy the president wanted to lead a makeshift government is in fact a veteran of the International Monetary Fund, a Europhile to the moon and back, and a man who has come to represent a kind of a symbol of austerity in Italy. So there was more murders. Italian people absolutely kicking off. There's outrage. Now, it's not unusual what the president did, but it's incredibly rare to say you can't have the finance minister of your choice. They obviously said, well, Cottarelli, this IMF guy, he's not going to lead an interim government. We're not having that either. By the way, this Cottarelli guy, when he was at the International Monetary Fund for 5 years between 2008 and 2013, I'm not going to swear, Cottarelli, he backed the most severe austerity measures to be implemented and inflicted on the Italian people. Right? So it's no wonder the president of Italy wants this guy to lead some sort of interim government to stave off the forming of a coalition by the nationalist and Eurosceptic parties. By the way, this guy was called Mr. Scissor. This guy, Cottarelli, the IMF guy, because he recommended government cuts of 32 billion euro, which absolutely liquidated, destroyed pensions in the country. And this is the man who the president wants to run an interim government. That's fascism, folks. You know, I know we use emotive language on this program from time to time, and sometimes it gets a bit melodramatic. I'm well aware of it. I have a tendency towards melodrama. Sometimes I know, but this is fascism. You have a government ready to go. They have a mandate from the Italian people. President says you can't name him as your finance minister. So there's been talk of impeaching the president. Not sure that's going to happen. It's in plain sight what's happened in Italy. No conspiracy theories. It's all out in the open. The president has basically said that no political movement or no coalition government could ever govern if they wanted to challenge the monetary union. That's the euro. And there's been a couple of interesting comments over the last day and a half from the leaders of Five Star and Liga. Luigi Di Maio is the leader of the Five Star movement. He has said this, quote, "Why don't we just say that in this country it's pointless voting, since it is the ratings agencies and the financial lobbies who decide the governments?" Right? And his pal, Matteo Salvini, the Liga headman, he has said, and I quote, "We have a problem with democracy because the Italian people are sovereign and they cannot be ruled by spreads. It is a very serious matter that the president chose the markets and the European Union rules over and above the interests of the Italian people." Interestingly enough, there is something called the Eurobarometer survey. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, ever come across it. It basically tracks people's opinions right across Europe as to how they feel about the European Union. Today, only 48% of people in the EU are satisfied with how democracy is working in the EU. And only 44% of people feel that they have any voice at all. However, in Italy, it's only 29% of people that feel they have any voice at all. They don't, of course. They don't have any voice. Country's not a sovereign country. So Italians, like the Greeks and the Irish and the Portuguese, might be today thinking, well, this is the way it is. This is the European Union. It's a fascist dictatorship. So the European Central Bank, then the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, I've talked a lot about those institutions on this programme over the years, who runs them and what they are. So I won't labour that point. But let me read you something that's very interesting today. And if you're listening to this programme and you voted for the UK to remain in the European Union, and that was your right, by the way, that was your sovereign right. I would never tell anybody how they should or shouldn't vote. I'll argue with you all day long, but I never condemn you for it. I'll never slate you for it. I never criticise or abuse you for it. You voted to remain in the UK, fair enough. That's what you thought. Here's a quote from, God, my pronunciations are going to be tested here. It's Athanasios Orphanides. That's right, Athanasios Orphanides. He's a former governor at the European Central Bank. Right, so this guy's take on things, well, it carries a bit of weight. Athanasios Orphanides, former governor of the European Central Bank. He said that the ECB has a nuclear weapon. And that weapon is, I could kiss this guy, by the way, because I've been saying this for years. He said their weapon is their control over sovereign bond spreads and liquidity for the banks in every country. Orphanides says they threaten governments that misbehave with financial destruction. They try to scare them into voluntary acceptance of policies. Right? He goes on to say they cut off refinancing and threaten to kill the banking system. They create a rollover crisis in the bond market. This is what happened in Italy in 2011, he said. It's happened everywhere, Professor Orphanides. Now, he's based in MIT in Boston these days. And he said that the ECB is very careful not to leave paper trails or to take any decisions that could be challenged in court. He said they operate in a grey area without clear legal authority. Well, of course they do. The grey area is this crazy paradigm where the world's media will not inform its readers, its viewers and its listeners of what is going on. Mad. Orphanides goes on to say the trick is to work hand in glove with the Eurogroup, which is the star chamber of European Monetary Union finance ministers that is accountable to no democratic body and is essentially under the control of the German finance ministry. Where's Michael Shrimpton? He'd love this, Michael. but it's true. And we know it to be true. And Orphanides finishes by saying, what happens is that everybody at the Eurogroup meeting gangs up on the country they want to attack. Brilliant. The Eurogroup is the star chamber of European Monetary Union finance ministers. All the European Monetary Union finance ministers all meet at the Eurogroup and decide which countries they're going to pick off and attack them by destroying their banking systems. Because, of course, the banks that exist in the UK, in Spain, in Greece, in Ireland, and so on, are capitalised by the European Central Bank. What capitalises the European Central Bank? Good question. And this is what happens, and what happened when you joined the Euro. When you joined the Euro, as the Republic of Ireland did, and my great friend and colleague Jean-Anne Crowley might help me remember, I think it might have been the year 2000, Jean-Anne. Was it 2001? When you join the single currency, you give overarching control of your financial system to the Rothschild-controlled European Central Bank and the IMF and the World Bank. They capitalise your national central bank. Your governments borrow from your country's central bank, which is capitalised by the ECB. Debt, 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 followed by asset stripping, followed by austerity. It's the mafia. The Italian people said enough is enough. We want out of it. The Greeks did. And here's my big worry, and I don't know what you think of this. I'll be very interested to get your thoughts on this. One of my rare triumphs, and I don't have many because when I make a prediction or when I make a guess at something, it usually goes the other way. But I told my listeners on this very programme that when Alexis Tsipras was elected as the new Greek leader, and he brought with him Herman Munster himself, Yanis Varoufakis, I told our audience that those guys were system shills. They were plants. They came in on a wave of promises that they wouldn't tolerate the situation in Greece anymore. They would write down billions of euro worth of debt. They would stand up to the Troika, which is the European Union, the IMF and the ECB. They would take back their sovereignty and all the rest of it. And what did Tsipras and Varoufakis do? They sold the country down the river. They put a referendum to the people. Should we accept the horrific terms of the European Union, European Central Bank bailout? The people said no. And Tsipras actually signed to, in an affront to the Greek people, signed not only to agree with the terms, but to take worse terms on board. And Varoufakis fucked off and became a talking head on European television. This is the truth. This is what the European Union is. And for all of those people who genuinely, because they genuinely believe that we're better off in the European Union, listen to what I'm telling you today. Read the Italian press. Read the European press. Read the Telegraph, which I know is a right-wing newspaper, and some of its reporters are undoubtedly anti-European Union, but they have nailed this, what is happening in Italy. It is a coup d'etat by the European Central Bank to tell the President of Italy, you are not to allow the rightful parties, the winners of that election, to form a government because their choice for finance minister is in fact anti-European Union, anti-single currency. Now, why did I mention Tsipras and Varoufakis? Because I'm very sceptical about these movements in parts of Europe that have been destroyed by the single currency. We saw what happened in Greece, as I mentioned. Very dubious I am about how serious these guys are. And if they are not, in fact, opposition being handed to the people by the architects of the European Union itself. This is when you start to get paranoid and you start to think, am I actually saying this stuff out loud? Am I even listening to myself saying this stuff? Can the Italians trust the 5-star movement and Liga? I don't know. But there is a coup d'etat happening in Italy. Front of our eyes. 1st of January 1999, says Les Hewitt. I think Jean Ann said it too. Thank you, guys. I should have remembered that date because I would have covered that in my time at WLR-FM. But that's right. They take everything. They capitalise your banks so that you can borrow from your own banks to run the country at astronomical interest rates. The money is created out of thin air. I've said this a million times. I'm boring the shit out of myself. They loan the money into existence, but they don't create the interest, thus creating a never-ending cycle of debt. It can never be repaid. This is simple mathematics. It can never be repaid. Then they come in and enforce the brutal austerity that the Italians have seen, the Irish have seen, the Greeks, and so on, so on, so on. And of course we've seen here in the UK. Cuts to everything. Cuts to vital public services. Cuts to social projects. Cuts to projects. Cuts to education for people with learning disabilities. Cuts for back to work schemes for people with disabilities. Cuts in living disability benefits for people with disabilities. Cuts. To pay for a debt that you never had anything to do with. But yet they in some sort of Stockholm Syndrome thing, they convince you that you lived beyond your means and it's all your fault. And the media repeats this and rinses it. Nobody challenges it. The Italian people went out and 60% of them said, no way. We've had enough. After months of screwing around, the parties are ready to form a coalition. The European Central Bank, in they come and says, no, you're not to allow them form a government. But anybody who lives in the Republic of Ireland, who's even mildly awake, will laugh. Because the Irish government, whether it is Fine Gael on its own, whether it's Fianna Fáil on its own, whether it's a coalition, the Irish government must get its budget approved by the German finance minister, who rolls into town accompanied by dark-suited evil spirits from the ECB, the IMF and the EU. That's the way it works. Jean Ann is right, because the big idea is to destroy society as we know it. To destroy it. And all the identitarians, the old left, do it with me now, do the hokey cokey with me. Shake it to the left and you shake it to the right. You've got the alt-right over there and the alt-left while they are killing one another over an illusion. The illusion of change. While that's going on, and we're storming Downing Street to scream about a racist bigot like Tommy Robinson, this shit goes on unnoticed. And this is the real shit. This is the real stuff. Not Roseanne, whether she's racist or not. Not Tommy and his band of merry fuckwits. Excuse my language. That's not a story. This is a story. This is a story. Handful of bankers representing the Rothschild, Warburg, Rockefeller, Oppenheimer families and the royal families of Europe are squeezing the life out of European countries, killing millions of people through starvation, through poverty, through illness, while at the same time they are laying waste in a Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome type scenario in the Middle East to compound what's happening in Europe by flooding the continent with millions and millions of unfortunates, human beings like you and I. Houses are absolutely blown to fuck. nothing left. They come into Europe and an already teetering, creaking, groaning system just collapses. This is the truth. This is the truth. I swear by, if there is an almighty God, I swear on everything that's sacred. I've been in this business for years. Forget my education, it doesn't mean anything. I would have absolutely laughed in the face of somebody who said this to me 20 years ago, 23 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was making my way into third level education. This is what's going on. But you either realise that and you think, what do we do about it? Or you fool yourself into believing that, like Ken Livingstone, whom I admire, Ken, former mayor of London, chucked out of the Labour Party because he made a comment about the Havre Agreement, the Zionists and the Nazis. You know Ken. Ken was on RT today saying that, he said, the establishment is terrified of a socialist government. No, it isn't. Establishment couldn't give a shit. When are people going to wake up to that? They don't care. Why? Because Jeremy Corbyn said, I will set up a national investment bank to invest in vital public services. Good stuff, Jeremy. But then Jeremy's finance minister, John McDonnell, acknowledged that the National Investment Bank would have to be capitalised the exact same way that all the other banks are capitalised. Meaning what? Meaning that Jeremy Corbyn and his band of merry men might get in, and in the very short term, there might be some relief for the disabled. There might be some relief for those who can't work. Yes, there might be. God love them in the short term. But then, because of all the borrowing, Jeremy will leave. He'll be voted out, and then you'll get another Tory government. And then they'll say, we arrived at the Treasury and there was no money. Shit! We've got to go cap in hand to the Bank of England, which is capitalised by the ECB, and borrow more. And you're going to have to pay for it. And it goes on and on and on. And economists have been on this programme have told us that each subsequent crash because of this boom to bust the economic system will be worse than the one that went before it. Right? And all that money and all that real wealth, land, property, that all goes one way, it goes up, and all the shit comes down. That's the truth of it. That's what's happened in Italy. Jean Ann is pointing out to me the population has been weakened at the same time this is going on by geoengineering and compulsory vaccination, which she thinks Italy might have. I didn't know that. Now she's going to check that for me. Does Italy have compulsory vaccination there for youngsters and maybe for older people? This cripples me. It cripples me to be talking about the likes of Tommy Robinson, knowing what I know now, because it's just insignificant. But you do it to try and get through to people. Those that are controlling this reality want us to splinter into identity groups and spend all our time calling one another names. Even if those names are only, you socialist bastard. Ah, you conservative bastard, you bastard. Oh, you're a Tory, are you, you bastard? You heartless bastard. Oh, you're a crazy socialist, are you? Borrow. It's all brilliant, isn't it? Amschel Rothschild's child said it, I don't care who sits on the throne of England. Give me control of the money supply. And I'll control not just the country in question, but I'll control the world. That's where we are, sadly. Just a little bit about Roseanne, then a break, and then I'll open the phone and you can chat away with me on the phone for the rest of the programme. She's been blaming sleeping pills for a tweet that she put out which likened an African-American woman to an ape. That isn't nice, that. Now, you know I'm no virtue signaler. If you read my article today, you'll know where I'm coming from on this. She put a tweet out. It was about politics. She was angry and she said something which is more than a little bit unpleasant. But she blamed it on using a sedative that she's been using as a sleeping aid. Valerie Jarrett is the lady. This was in a row about Obama suppressing information on spying in his administration. And Valerie Jarrett was working for him. Somebody accused Valerie Jarrett of being complicit in nefarious activity in the Obama regime. And Roseanne weighed in and made a pretty nasty comment about the woman's appearance and mentioned Planet of the Apes and stuff like that. Bit stupid, really. Not nice, right? So ABC has cancelled the programme. I wrote an article about it today. When I've worked in TV, it's been here in Manchester and in London. And we certainly didn't have huge crews of people because, you know, we were small potatoes compared to Hollywood production companies. You have to imagine there's a couple of hundred people working on Roseanne. They've been fired now, effectively. And it's a difficult time to be in show business, as my learned friend, the actress, I mentioned her a minute ago, told me today. So is that the right thing to do because Roseanne said something stupid and possibly racist? This is the right thing to do. I would say no. I would say, like I said today, I would have insisted that Roseanne speak to Valerie Jarrett personally, offer her an apology, a sincere one, whether Ms. Jarrett accepted it or not. And I would have asked Roseanne not to embarrass the woman or to ridicule her, but I would have said, before the next episode goes out, Roseanne, speak to your fans and tell them that it's a stupid thing to do to resort to racial slurs because you have a political disagreement with somebody. It's not good enough. But they fired her, kicked the show off the air. It's virtue signalling in the extreme. Now, I don't agree with the alt-right. See, again, it's all absolutes, isn't it? It's all black and white, no pun intended. The alt-right are saying, wasn't racist, she did nothing wrong. Yes, she did do something wrong. Stop with that bullshit. She did. It's not right to say stuff like that. If you know anybody who's black, referring to them and comparing them to apes is not nice. Because they've had to listen to that shit all their lives. Many of them. You're just monkeys. It's not nice. So she did do something wrong. She's not evil. She shouldn't go into exile for it. Don't exile the woman. But don't fire everybody else. Jesus. What happened to forgiveness? What happened to, listen, I'm a fucking idiot. I shouldn't have said that. I've had to say that over the years. I've not racially abused anybody, but I've done other stuff that cast me in a poor light. I think today some of the stuff I pulled over the years, I'd be ostracized. I'd be gone now. And I'm not a bad guy. You know, what happened to, she had a slip. She had a bad night. She said a stupid, daft, hurtful thing. Kick her in the arse. Make her apologise. Do something nice for, I don't know, for a charity, for children or something, and then get back to fucking work, you know? Right? It's crazy, isn't it? Crazy. And again, you know, talk about distraction. And you might say, well, why are you talking about it, Richie?